It looks like apology season is upon us, doesn't it? We're finally getting a full rape gang inquiry, but we don't need to wait for that to conclude before those who did their best to dilute and play down the scandal say sorry for doing so. Tomorrow, we'll likely see the publication of the Casey review into rape gangs, and it's understood the reports will directly link the scandal to the Pakistani community and say the rape of Britain was institutionally covered up over fears of being called racist. Well, let's start with the Prime Minister himself, shall we, who hurriedly announced a national inquiry last night when he heard what was inside Baroness Casey's report. In fact, the report is suggested to be so bad that Downing Street fears Southport-style riots. So I guess it's no wonder Keir Starmer made the call last night. But it was only in January, wasn't it, that the Prime Minister said this about calls for a national inquiry.
And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
Don't waste time waiting to say sorry, Prime Minister. The time is now. You can do it now. Nigel Farage said as much today, declaring Keir Starmer should apologise to the victims for the cynical way that he tried to avoid a proper grooming gang inquiry and for his insults to those who have tried to ensure the perpetrators are held to account. Next up in the list, it's Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, who could have taken her chance to apologise on behalf of the government this morning, but defended their delay in launching an inquiry.
When Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions, he took forward the first prosecutions
when he was Prime Minister,
Rochdale.
He repeatedly refused the requests of people saying there has to be a national inquiry to clear this up once and for all.
You know, the Conservatives could have done another national inquiry, but they didn't. We've been focused on implementing the recommendations of the Alexis J review and other reviews because those recommendations have just been sitting on the table. But the Prime Minister wanted to assure himself he was doing everything that was necessary, which is why he asked Baroness Casey to do this rapid review. She said at the outset that she didn't think there was a need for a national inquiry, but during the course of her rapid review, she's concluded that a national inquiry alongside the local inquiries to give statutory powers is the right way forward.
Well, maybe tomorrow you'll say sorry, Chancellor, perhaps. Well, then we have Global's Emily Maitlis, who recently gave this cringeworthy performance when interviewing former Reform MP Rupert Lowe.
Do you not think, Emily, there's an issue with Pakistani Muslims raping working-class white underage girls? Do you not think there's an issue there?
I think there is an appalling issue with grooming when it hits any community and any age. We only ever hear you talk about Pakistani perpetrators.
Are you telling me there's no issue?
I'm telling you that you are focusing on Pakistani grooming gangs because probably you're racist and you don't believe that there are white perpetrators of the same crime. Can you deny that?
It's still unbelievable now, even watching that back. I mean, what a joke. Baroness Casey, of course, as a reminder, will reportedly tomorrow explicitly link the rape gangs to Pakistani communities. Maybe, Emily, you could write a letter to Rupert Lowe asking for forgiveness. Then, of course, we have Labour's Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, MP, who came rather undone on Question Time this week when he said this about small boat invaders.
Got to make sure you're doing these things properly. There are lots of sensitive information, sensitive cases across the country. Remembering that Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions when he worked with Baroness Casey to bring the first prosecutions for grooming gangs in Rochdale many years ago. That process has now concluded. The report has been written by Baroness Casey, and on the basis of that, a national inquiry will now follow.
All right, well, no apology there. But whilst we're at it, I think Tommy Robinson deserves an apology from some quarters too.
Anyone who's been murdered by a Muslim gang, you probably don't, I do. Do you know any 15-year-old girls that you know that you've grown up with that have been raped or pimped? You don't. So I don't expect you to understand the issues.
These are all personal issues of yours.
Personal issues in towns and cities like mine that are happening, and they're not happening with the Sikh community, they're not happening with the Jewish community.
And indeed, they're not happening with most Muslims.
No, they're happening within the Islamic community.
That was 2013, by the way. But the truth is, the people who deserve the biggest apology in all of this, of course, are the victims. Don't wait for the inquiry to conclude. I think the Casey review tomorrow will already be enough to shame a lot of people. And may apology season kick off in full swing. Well, joining me now is my panel tonight, GBNews contributor Will Kingston, political commentator Chloe Dobbs and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Good evening, panel. Chloe, I'll start with you. Happy birthday, first of all, for yesterday.
Thank you. Well, this was the best birthday present ever, finding out that we're going to have a national inquiry into the grooming gangs. I think Starmer and Emily Maitlis and everyone else you mentioned there should apologise, but I highly, highly doubt that they will. We know, I mean, politicians generally are not very good at apologising, but Starmer particularly. And, I mean, look what happened with the winter fuel U-turn. They pretended that they hadn't made any mistake whatsoever, and this was just because Rachel Reeves has managed to stabilise the economy enough that she's now able to change policy. Labour clearly are just going to say, oh, yeah, this is what we were thinking of doing all along. We were just waiting for this report to come out to make our decision, when actually very clearly, I mean, you showed the clip of Starmer saying this is jumping on a far-right bandwagon calling for a national inquiry. It's pretty embarrassing for him.
Will, are we going to get apologies from anybody?
No, we're not. But the thing is, they should. Maybe not necessarily because it's the morally right thing to do, although it is, but because it's just the politically intelligent thing to do. There is the lost art of the political apology. And really, this would be the quickest way for them to show maturity. It would be the quickest way for them to show confidence. It would be the quickest way for them to actually diffuse the sort of commentary that, say, you know, commentators like Ben, like you just put forward. If they come out tomorrow and say, we're very sorry, we underestimated the scale of this problem, that's why we did this report, and now we recognise it and we're going to go full bore on it, that's the quickest way to stop that sort of comments like that you just made. But they're not going to do it. And I think it just shows the lack of confidence in this government, but also just the lack of political skills. I think someone like a Tony Blair, and, you know, Bill maybe would be better placed to answer this, but I think someone like Tony Blair would have apologised for this, and he would have been much more successful on the politics of it as a result of it.
I guess the argument, Bill, is they'll wait until the inquiry's done, but I argue just apologise now because this Casey review is coming out tomorrow. We've had leaks of the details.
Yeah, but let's deal with the facts. Keir Starmer, in 2012, so 13 years ago, was one of the first people in this country to address, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, address the grooming gangs scandal. He said, and I'll quote from it, in a number of cases presented to us, particularly involving groups, there's clearly an issue of ethnicity, and that has to be understood and addressed. And he changed the prosecutorial guidelines within the CPS to be able to effectively tackle the grooming gang scandal. You read Andrew Norfolk, who's the pioneering Times journalist who first exposed the grooming gangs. He credits Keir Starmer with gripping the issue.
So I agree with you. So Keir Starmer, back then, when he was head of the CPS, he knew how serious this was. Yeah. And so why in January then, knowing how serious this was and the depth it goes and the cover-up involved, knowing that, why did he turn down a national inquiry? And also call it a far-right bandwagon?
Because there's already been inquiries, and what he was focused on was implementing the recommendations from those inquiries so that people can have their victims' cases reopened and so that it becomes a criminal offence to withhold evidence of child sexual exploitation.
I would say, Bill, sham inquiries, that some didn't even mention particular cities where grooming gangs were absolutely rife.
Well, the J inquiry did cover grooming gangs. It wasn't the sole focus, but it did cover it. But
there's a subsection of the subsection, Bill. That's
credit where it's due. The government commissioned Louise Casey. She's an absolute star in my experience, and I've worked with her. She has changed her mind and concluded there needs to be a national inquiry.
Do you think Emily Maitlis should apologise?
Yeah, I thought
to Rupert Lowe?
I thought that was appalling.
Do you think Tommy Robinson deserves an apology?
I'm being absolutely frank. I didn't properly hear what Tommy Robinson was saying or what Jeremy Paxman was saying.
He was speaking to Paxman. Tommy Robinson was trying to say there were Pakistani rape gangs. This was back in 2011 or 2013, that clip. And Jeremy Paxman was saying, pretty much, you're making this up in your head because, you know, you...
Well, I think that's wrong, and I've had run-ins with Jeremy Paxman. But let me say this as well. We're going to have a national inquiry. National inquiries normally take 5 to 10 years, and it's really, really important that time lag doesn't stop the government from implementing the recommendations to tackle this abuse.
All right, Will, last word to you, quickly.
Bill, it may be because Keir Starmer has the emotional depth of a teaspoon as is, but you've got to admit that he has missed the mood of the moment. You can put all the quotes that you want out there from 2012, but even the way that he presented the report yesterday at 6 p.m. was administrative, it was bureaucratic, and it had no care or consideration for the victims of the scandal.
All right. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I agree with you that one of Keir's downsides is his communication skills. But the bottom line is, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, he recognised the issue and gripped it.
Okay.
He's doing that now.
I wish he did something about it.
I think he takes
We'll continue this in the papers. Communication skills, or maybe lack of communication skills.